the biggest surprises off the NFL draft are going to be, and how you can avoid some post-draft mistakes. That's what we're going to talk about today on this edition of the RotoViz Fantasy Football Podcast. My name is Colm Kelly. I am joined by Derek Brown of Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. You can follow him on social media at dbro_FFB. You can check me out at Overtime Ireland. We did a show earlier this week talking about some of the wide receivers, where maybe Derek's rankings are different than consensus. We also talked about one running back you need to know. So we aren't going to give away any spoilers on this edition. You can head back and listen to those. Who is this year's Bucky Irving is the question that we did answer. The draft is obviously this Thursday. When you're listening to this, it'll be close to draft time as things kick off. We're going to give some predictions here at the start. If you don't want to hear them, you can skip ahead to the midpoint to be able to hear about some of the veterans we're going to talk about. If you want to hear them and know how right we were, you can say, man, Derek nailed that. How did he know that multiple days before the NFL draft? That is what we're going to do here on the show. But I'm excited for the draft itself to see where the players land. Maybe the Packers get themselves a wide receiver in round one, something that I don't know if it'll ever happen in my lifetime, but we'll see, see if that happens. But in terms of draft surprises, Derek, how bold are you feeling here to make some predictions?
Pretty bold. I got a 3-pack of predictions right now. I mean, you could tell me if this is spicy or if it's kind of a letdown. I mean, we can do this kind of like a Hot Ones challenge, Colm.
Are we starting off on mild, or are we going straight to spicy?
I mean, different levels. I gotta just make it as a grab bag, and I'm just going to mix it up and just toss plates at you, and you tell me if it's absolutely just scalding lava hot or you're not very impressed.
And now that you've set up two things, I am going to have to ask you, are you a chicken wings guy?
Oh, dude, yes. Yeah. And boneless wings are not a thing. Boneless wings.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Do you eat chicken wings, or do you eat those things that do not exist?
I eat wings. I don't eat nuggets. Okay. Yeah. I do. That's one of the few adult things that I actually do. Yes, bone in, or it's not an actual wing. It's a chicken nugget.
Yeah, chicken wings in Ireland, they're not like a common thing. You can go out and get really good ones, but because of that, over the years, we've got kind of perfected it at home, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. But
yeah, I could send you an easy wing recipe too. All you need is an air fryer, baby.
And then you mentioned lava as the hot. Did you see the Minecraft movie when we're talking about lava chicken?
No, I have not. I have not seen the Minecraft movie. I haven't. I'll put it this way. I know I'm old and I'm not young, and I haven't braved the chicken jockey scene. So no, I have abstained to this point.
Well, I seen the chicken jockey scene before it was a thing, and the reason for that is my daughter turned 7 the week off the Minecraft movie coming out. So what we did was we rented a theater, a screen, and we had her and 20 of her friends.
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
And so it was much more civilized than some of the clips that we're seeing on social media.
You didn't get pelted with popcorn in your face?
No. Well, when they're 7-year-old kids, you do get pet.
Okay, well, a little bit.
Not to the same extent.
But nobody called the cops on your 7-year-old, right?
No, okay. Thankfully not. But yeah, we did get to see the movie, and I have to say, I did also enjoy it quite a bit. But we'll move into some of these takes. Is there something that you think is the biggest surprise for this NFL draft versus what consensus is expecting? Could be like position groups falling, could be more position groups going in the top 20 picks. Anything you want, any bold trades, whatever. Hit me with your prediction here.
So there's a lot of love out there. Maybe this is bold, maybe this is not, but I do feel like there is a hive that I'm going to upset right now. I think the Cam Skattebo drops into the 5th round of the NFL draft, and everybody's hope the 5th.
So you're saying that he's, when we talk about running
late
back
day
10 through 20 could go in any order, you're saying that he's going to be at the back of the queue?
Yep. I think he is going to be a 5th round pick in the NFL draft. I think he's going to drop into Tyler Algier territory. I do not think he goes in round 2. I don't think he goes in round 3 or 4. And I think it's going to make him plummet down rankings.
And is that based on when I say like draft versus consensus, is that where you would take him, or do you think he should go before that? Are you out on Skattebo?
I'm out on Skattebo. Like I think he's a round 4 guy if you really kind of believe in him, and no higher than that. I just think that there's too much with the testing. There's some work ethic concerns that have kind of come up, or at least kind of cropped up in the ether. And for a player that I'm worried about borderline athleticism, and I think that for really, and this kind of going back to fantasy, Colm, Skattebo's you look at archetypes of players, he needs the volume. Like, if he doesn't get the volume and he doesn't get draft capital and either get the draft capital to get the role or earn the role, then what are we talking about here? Like, yes, Skattebo everybody loves, or they love him and they say, oh, he for the reasons of, oh, he can handle a lot of volume, but you're not getting big plays. Yeah, he's got pass game utility, but instead of him being Kansas City's Kareem Hunt, what if he's Cleveland's Kareem Hunt? Like in the back end of it, where he's getting 8 to 12 touches and he doesn't score a touchdown. Are you that happy that you draft Cam Skattebo? I wouldn't be.
I think that's pretty spicy. I think that's pretty hot. I think if he's in round 5, I think it'll put some shockwaves through certainly the fantasy community in terms of where people are, hoping that he's going to be there for them both in season long aspects. But the interesting thing again with how the NFL is developing, you want to have those uber athletes that can play running back, but with how teams have changed, particularly in 2024, and we'll see if that plays out through the rest of it. I do think that the volume may be there for some of these backs, going into the season, but then that becomes, landing spot dependent if you get that, if you're behind some of these veterans. But I still think that there's hope there for Skattebo, having that transition to the NFL and having success this season. When we look at last year, and I kind of hinted at it there, it had a massive impact on fantasy football in general. The wide receivers and the running backs, the rookie class pretty much crushed. Even like if we're looking at things that didn't work out, Marvin Harrison didn't hit at the level that people maybe were hoping, but there was concerns with his transition to the NFL even at that particular time. Much preferred the Malik Neighbors profile over Harrison, and that's not to say that Harrison won't bounce back moving forward.
I'm with you. Malik Neighbors was my wide receiver 1. I had him over Harrison too.
And I think, some of that's on Harrison. I think, I'm all the way out on Kyler Murray here. I think part of that's on the quarterback and the coaching staff and so on. But you had Brock Bowers coming in. Just the draft in general, even, you had Bucky Irving into it. It really delivered a lot of players that were projecting to be high-end fantasy assets for years to come. What will be the impact on the fantasy landscape of this NFL draft, either positive or negative, that people might be missing?
I think, and we talked about this a decent amount on the wide receiver episode, I think all of these wide receiver 2s that are supposedly not great in this wide receiver class is going to surprise people. And they're going to look back on this wide receiver class and wish they would have drafted more of the wide receivers from this class, specifically the guys that I think are going to actualize higher ceilings than people give it credit for. And with that, you're going to see some of these guys upset target totem poles on multiple teams where they're drafted. We enter week 1, and these guys are looked at as like the third option in a passing game. And by the end of the season, they're either the number 1 option or the number 2 option. And I'll even give you a 4-pack of players that I think are going to do this, Colm. Trey Harris, Emeka Egbuka, Jalen Noel, and Jaden Higgins. All of those guys outbuck expectations, draft capital, and people walk away wishing they would have liked this wide receiver class more.
I think that's again. I think that's not as hot as the Skattebo one, but I think it's up there, and there's definitely a bit of heat on the tongue with that one. I think if I'm going mild, because I think everyone is on board with this consensus at the moment, and you can the veteran tier of running backs are in just massive trouble. I've talked about
break out the shovel, baby.
Yeah, I think like that's like a lemon and herb kind of level take at this particular point. But yeah, anyone that has those veterans on your dynasty rosters, get them moved here before certainly before Friday. But it's there's going to be a lot of change and flux in the running back position over the next 7 days or so. But it's going to take into the season for it to take effect. But the footprints will certainly be there very, very quickly. The other part of the draft last year, we talked about Bucky Irving on the last episode and who's this year's Bucky Irving. But last year at this point, like we had the poor testing for Irving, then he got landed in Tampa Bay behind Rashad White. And for a lot of people who were out, like White's season 2 years ago was very inefficient, but it was a PPR machine in terms of like putting out. He had great end of year numbers, so it felt like a really bad landing spot behind a player who had really bad testing. But then obviously he goes and absolutely crushes, and thankfully we stayed on board that throughout the process and had a lot of Irving and Dynasty, and of course in the the season long aspect. We had Brock Bowers landing with the Raiders. Obviously, there was the talent of Bowers, but wasn't the prime landing spot based on offense and quarterback situations, but was going to be able to solidify volume there. Then we had Jaden Daniels land with the Commanders. It felt like the Commanders of Terry McLaurin, who's maybe beyond his prime and nothing else. And obviously, Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin show that there's a little bit of life left in McLaurin yet. But we talked about as well, Brian Thomas Jr. and the Jaguars, didn't feel like an ideal landing spot. How can we use like the information that we have gathered to this point of the process and then use that to our advantage after the draft? Because there's no doubt there's going to be some of these guys, and they're either going to be a wide receiver landed in a bad depth chart where it feels like it's going to take a lot of work for them to get on the field, or it's going to be a situation where maybe two of these running backs get drafted to the same team behind a veteran. There's always these funky situations that play out in the NFL draft, but how can we kind of ignore the noise and keep, use that information that we've gathered here pre-draft?
You bet on talent. You don't get caught up in the landing spot stuff, and you just bet on talent. I don't want to keep, I'm not just trying to keep this simple, Colm, but like we get so hung up on landing spots and how much that matters to people. And
I think you're crushing this answer too. So I'll let you go.
Yeah, dude.
It's the profile. It's the player profile that you're looking at.
It is the talent. It's the talent. It's the talent. It's the talent. And talent finds a way. We talk about landing spots and we look at it as like it's biblical, it's scripture, it's all written in stone, and these things don't change. And yet
the landing spot's more important for bad players than it is for good.
And we all live through it every year. Where how many times do we have to go through this every single year where it's now after that season, all these players are gone, this player is gone, this head coach and this system is different. And then oh, wow, we're really high on him. Oh, geez, I wish I would have drafted him. Like Jackson Smith and Jigba, we can all point back to that. This year's Jackson Smith and Jigba, Ricky Pearsall, that's going to happen this year. Like we just keep seeing this year after year after year. I'm old enough to remember, Colm, all of the A.J. Brown hoopla. Like, when are we going to learn and wake up and realize that it is talent over situation 10 times out of 10? That's what you invest in.
Yeah, and again, if we even go back to last year, like you can say what you want about like the Giants quarterbacks, they were all really bad last year, but the talent rose to the top. And then like I know I'm giving out about Kyler Murray, but there is the situation where like Kyler Murray's still a better quarterback than what the Giants were rolling out.
And it didn't matter for Malik Neighbors.
So it's going to be interesting. I think it can be a tiebreaker, or if you're a bad player, it can make you a relevant player. But I think that if you're a really, really top tier player who's going to be at the highest level, the transition is the biggest thing. Can you translate to the NFL level? And sometimes the talent, or maybe it's not the talent, maybe it's the player themselves, their personality, maybe they get caught up in the lifestyle or something like that, and it doesn't translate. But yeah, I think that's a really strong answer there.
Can I give you one extra, because you were asking for hot takes earlier, just kind of on the talent over situation. Can I give you one out of left field here that could possibly happen?
Go for it.
2025, Rachaad White. Do you know who the running back that nobody could see, that has had the bell cow workload that nobody could see coming, getting Wally pipped, and maybe this team drafts yet another running back in the 3rd or 4th round of the NFL draft this year? I think Kyren Williams could be this year's Rachaad White.
Kyren. There's another guy who tested badly, and at this
tested badly, been super inefficient, has just had the workload all to himself. And whether it's Blake Corum or whether the Rams go dipping into the running back streets in round 4 or trade into round 5 and take a guy like maybe a Taj Brooks or somebody, I'm really worried about Kyren this year.
I think that one thing that he definitely is going for him is Sean McVay seems to be absolutely madly in love with him. But the player that I was wondering where you're going to get to, I think that Joe Mixon and the Houston Texans.
Oh yeah,
interesting.
Yeah.
Think,
yes, sir.
Like and the other one, and this is me being a Packers fan, I still think there's like what we've seen from Jacobs last year was a massive outproduction of his. I think the Packers, if Love is healthy this year, and if they do something wide receiver related in the draft, they should move. It was to their detriment that they went towards the run game last year overall, and I think that those two. So that's 3 names we've given you that are in trouble there. That I think people will be fighting pretty hot at that particular point. Some veterans that could be on the move. There is reports over the last couple of days. Mark Andrews, Dallas Goedert, 2 tight ends could be moved before the NFL draft or before the end of the draft. Are they players who their teams should or would move here before the draft? I think both of them are probably better off keeping them, unless it's a situation where they're going to get a return for them, which I don't really necessarily see being all that high. What's your expectations there?
I think Andrews stays put, and I think he should stay put. I
think when you're a team that's that close,
I don't see him moving.
No, you need to keep as many of those guys, unless it's a case that contract wise you have to get out from under it. And
I don't think he moves. I think Dallas Goedert's a possibility to move, but even if Philly, I think when it comes down to Philly, and we see them plan for not only this year but the year ahead, I think Dallas Goedert can definitively move. And if he doesn't move, I think they draft his heir apparent at tight end anyway. But so here's one shakeup that could happen in the NFL draft and could throw people for a loop. Everybody's been mocking Tyler Warren to the Colts. What if he doesn't go to the Colts? What if the Colts trade for Dallas Goedert and use that first round pick on some other position?
That will be interesting. I was going through some of the predictions with Sean on the podcast that will be coming out on Wednesday for RotoViz Overtime, and going through some of the rookie tight ends, I was like, I don't want to see them end up there in Indianapolis. So that would be nice. I would, we'll make Dallas Goedert fantasy irrelevant, and we'll put the rookies to somewhere that can give them relevancy. Yep. But I think the tight end position, it's going to be interesting to see how the NFL values some of these guys, and the way that the league over the last couple of years, we've seen the breakout of Bowers. We've seen Trey McBride take a couple of seasons, but jump ahead then. And it's interesting that we're talking about Dallas Goedert potentially being traded, because Zach Ertz was obviously the roadblock that was traded from the Eagles. It was in front of Trey McBride. We've seen Sam Laporta. So I think teams might be willing to go a little bit earlier on these tight ends, and I'm excited to see where they land. But I'm kind of hoping that they make it past kind of those top 15 picks, which I don't expect to happen in probably both cases. The next one I want to talk about is a veteran that's staying put, but it's Kenneth Walker, Ken Walker III. You tweeted recently 2025, the year of Kenneth Walker. Any concern for the draft itself? Charbonnet still there in the backfield, and then the team environment. I think that the Seahawks could be they're going to be something that we don't fully know until the season is underway as to how it's going to evolve. Obviously, there's a lot of change at the wide receiver position. I am a big fan of JSN, but I have quite a bit of concern based on where his ADP now is in season long. If I have him in Dynasty, very happy, and potentially even with that concern, looking to move on. Yep. I think that you touched on Deebo Samuel and him now being with the Commanders. A similar situation is Cooper Kupp. But the one thing about Kupp last year is he did start the season a lot better than people are giving him credit for. A strong start to the year. But there's a lot of changes, and then you have Sam Darnold, the quarterback. I don't think his game's going to translate all that well to being back outdoors all the time. So there's a lot of areas. Maybe all this here is playing into why Kenneth Walker is going to get all the ball. But hit me with your Kenneth Walker is ready to be the RB1 this season.
I think Kenneth Walker could have a Josh Jacobs in Raiders monster year, and Seattle just he crushes. I think he could be one of the best values. I think he could run and be a top 3 running back this year. And really, it's not a matter of talent for Kenneth Walker. It's a matter of he needs blocking help up front. And I think Seattle has to improve their offensive line. I think at this point, considering all the draft picks they have 3 picks in the top 50. They're going to use 1, maybe 2 of those on the offensive line.
Is this the part where we talked about rational coaching on the first episode this week, and now we're talking about rational, drafting decisions?
I mean, well, here's the other part about it, Colm. Here's the other thing.
I feel like the Seahawks and the Texans may have the same offensive line rule book as
That's fair. That's fair. Now I'll give you the other side of this. I think he could do this even if the offensive line is not massively improved. If they're just league average. Because if you would, and this is, I want to invest in ultra efficient players that we haven't seen because of whether it's been the blocking up front or his ability to stay healthy. Because, I mean, Walker only played 11 games last year, but in those 11 games, Colm, he was the RB12 in fantasy points per game. He was the RB6 in expected fantasy points per game.
And he was doing that, having to, like, you know, if he had a 10-yard run, he probably ran 30 yards to get it behind how that offensive line was blocking.
He's like, still elite. Yeah. Like at tackle breaking, this guy was first in missed tackles forced per attempt last year. And for everybody that came out, and this was what I think, not only is it the efficiency of the touches and the talent of Kenneth Walker and all the maybe the ecosystem as far as the run game gets better for him, but I think the one big question, and I pushed back about this as him as a prospect, but the one big question that we got answered last year, twofold. When Walker was actually on the field, he was the every down running back. Charbonnet was not a thing. And he was a damn good pass catcher, Colm. Like,
that was the big knock on him coming out of college.
It was.
I'm sure you remember the social media clips where, like, the Seahawks were tweeting out, like, pictures in training camp of him, you know, catching balls, you know, out of the back. And I mean, like, anyone could have caught these balls, but they were hyping it up. But he did show that. The other thing with him, like, he's going to turn 25 this season, but still very young in terms of his development here, and was somebody that I really liked coming into the league, and still really like. It's just been a case of, like, it hasn't all clicked together on a consistent basis. I like Kenneth Walker. I would really like to see your prediction play out.
I think it's the pass game upside that gives him so much ceiling that people aren't giving enough credit, Colm. Like, when the dude was top 6 in basically every efficiency metric from a receiving standpoint for a running back that we should care about. And yet that is kind of getting swept under the rug.
And he, if you're just talking through it there, but he went up to 46 receptions last year. Previously, he hadn't top 30 at 27, 29, went up to 46, played
46 in 11 games. In 11 games.
So lots to still, I think, squeeze from that orange, but it's a case of, can they put it all together in Seattle? The Seattle Seahawks have a potential to be, I like to bet on teams that people are overlooking by consensus. And I just have not fully bought myself into, because I had been waiting for, you know, the Cinderella story to end for Sam Darnold all last season. Like, if Geno Smith was still the quarterback of this team, I would be much more optimistic. But I think by the time the NFL draft finishes here, I may have be starting to convince myself that this is the team that you want to be buying in on those particular players. But the other part of it is the wide receivers are still, you know, quite high priced. The running backs is an interesting way to go and attack it. Christian Kirk, somebody who did come up in conversation now with the Texans. The NFL draft, we're talking about the running backs that could lose, you know, some momentum, lose some career trajectory with the draft. There's some veteran wide receivers around the league as well that I'm sure will be concerned. But Christian Kirk, if he can get through this draft and the team decides, yeah, we really need to focus on this offensive line and improve it from that perspective, and he doesn't get a lot of competition, and I think he could be a player that's in a prime spot here across from Nico Collins this season. Really hoping we see CJ Stroud right the ship. Really disappointing year 2 for him after a good year 1. I had Rich Rebar on last week, and it was a name that popped up, was Christian Kirk. And there's been a few people on, and we've kind of said, like, Christian Kirk, we've moved on to the next part of the conversation. But you did tweet out about another year of you investing in Christian Kirk is loading. And I feel like I'm kind of in a similar boat here. So we didn't discuss it further on those shows, but are we getting back on the Christian Kirk train once again? You also mentioned Andy Isabella earlier in the show, which ties in here with Christian Kirk.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, I'll pull out the Rookie of the Year quote here. One more time. Yeah. Just one more time, Colm. That's it. I am getting back on the train for this year because when Kirk was healthy last year, still he proved that he could separate at a high level amongst the 113 qualifying wide receivers, top 20 in both separation and route win rate. I mean, the targets there are there for the taking. He's a player that has shown that when he is healthy, Colm, and I know that we haven't gotten a fully healthy version of Christian Kirk since 2022, but when he's healthy, dude, I mean, we're getting a wide receiver 3 in fantasy with wide receiver 2 upside. And I mean, dude, if it's just him and Nico, there's no other target competition. Like, Dalton Schultz is not a high-end target earner. No. Joe Mixon isn't getting 120 targets out of the backfield. Like, Kirk
Well,
is
there's
going
the
to be in
Texans.
for.
They may go in that direction.
I mean, who knows, man? But like, this is all to say that I am willing to punch the ticket because too many people have been burned on it, man. Like, you know as well as I do, his ADP is not going to pull. Like, it will not climb, even in the most hype of best ball times.
Yeah.
When we're like wide receivers and the hype gets heavy in the summer. Do you really see the hype like going overboard for Christian Kirk, considering how much people have been burned over the last few years and what Houston put up from a pass game perspective last year? I can't see it happening.
I think, though, you may have actually figured out what the Texans are doing. They're going to give 200 targets to Joe Mixon, and they're not going to carry the ball at all because they cannot run through that offensive line at the moment. So they're just going to try and spread it out. And
so Joe, CMC, is that what the take we got this year?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm after saying at the start of the show that he's he's done, but we're back. We're
back in. We've come full circle.
If we look at Kirk, I do think you're right in terms of the buzz. Even if things are going well, I think he'll not be an attractive player. Entering his age 29 season, coming off an injury. The other thing with Kirk is he hasn't really ever stayed. He had 2 seasons where he stayed fully healthy. When it was a 17-game season, but those were the 2 years where he had 1,100 yards, almost 1,000 yards at 986, and he was finding the end zone in those years as well with a combined 13 touchdowns. So I still think that there's like the thing is the big problem when he was signed with the Jaguars, they gave him a lot of money coming over from Arizona, and that contract was way too big for what he was going to do with the
Trent Baalke contracts. What a time to be alive, baby.
But I do think like that first year he had 84 receptions, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. I think in year 1 he definitely over delivered what people's expectations were for it. But the other part of it then when we're looking is he's not a true wide receiver 1. But now you have Nico Collins, and then we're looking back to last year. Like, is he less of a player than Stephon Diggs was this time last year when we got very excited about Diggs being there, and Diggs was in the kind of 6th, 7th, 8th round range straight draft season,
and that was with a healthy Tank Dell, which we're not getting this year. So
I think there's, even if the draft went to get, the part would be if like one of these high-end rookie tight ends ends up there and a wide receiver, he could get squeezed quite a bit, but I think he's almost insulated from that, and maybe even one of those landing there may suppress that value even further, because when you look beyond him on the roster, there's nothing there. Like, you have Braxton Berrios, John Menchie, Justin Watson, there's nothing there. So it is going to be interesting to see. I think that I'm going to have to climb back on, buy myself a ticket and be ready to go here on the Christian Kirk train once more. But as we get ready to close up this edition, the NFL draft obviously will be happening just after people have listened to this. I'm excited to finally open those presents and see where these players are going to land over the course of the coming days. You can follow Derek over on social media at dbro_FFB. He's covering the NFL and the NFL draft over at Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. One last time, give a plug for what, maybe even you go beyond the draft. We're so close to the draft now. Go beyond the draft. What's happening post-draft for D-Bro?
Man, so 2 big, obviously the rankings are all getting a spit shine and an update, but the big lifts for me post NFL draft are going to be updating all my positional rookie primers. So quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, and updating my top 100 skill players. So when you're listening to this before the NFL draft, my top 100 will be live on Fantasy Pros, and after the draft, that top 100 will get updated with outlooks, landing spots, how I'm diving through that. And I want to be very clear about this. These are only fantasy players that you care about. So in this top 100, it is legit just 100 players, prospects from this class: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end.
Awesome stuff. So check that out. Check out Derek, as I mentioned, on social media as well. My name is Colm Kelly. Enjoy the NFL draft. And until we are back, have a good one.
Let's rock it.
Welcome in to the RotoViz Fantasy Football Podcast. It's myself, Colm Kelly, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Derek Brown